Beginning this week is your opportunity to help develop the 2013 Madison City budget. Good morning, I'm Neil Heinen. The series of community budget conversations get underway Thursday, and the mayor and the city council are genuinely interested in your input. Joining me this morning, Madison Mayor Paul Soglin, Common Council President Lauren Kinnair, and Council President Pro Tem Shiva Bidar-Sielaff. Thank you all very much for coming. So what do you want to hear from these folks?
We want to hear more. We really had a great session last year. This year we're moving it up a couple of months, which is really exciting because now the public steps in before the departments and the divisions get to work. And so we're looking to hear again what's important to people based on their values. Now,
are you going to open up these meetings, Paul? You know, give some introductory remarks. I mean, how are you going to set the stage?
Well, I'm not necessarily going to.
Okay.
But somebody from the city will set the stage. One thing we want to make sure is that folks understand this is not an opportunity for them to give speeches. This is an opportunity for them to join with their fellow citizens, join with city staff in how we formulate a budget.
Does it start from any particular premise? There's limits to what we can spend here. It's going to be a tough year. I mean, let me answer
part of the question. Yeah. One limit that I'm concerned about is time. Normally, we expect the public to give us input at the hearing process, which is 6 months from now. And so one of the things that's so critical is we hear from the public at the beginning.
And I do think we did an excellent job last time. Part of budget is educating people about the budget. Where does your tax dollar really go after you grumble and write that check and send it off? And so we've tried to educate people about what does the city really do for you for your tax dollar? For example, we kind of broke it into categories last year that talked about basic services, that talked about parks and recreational opportunities. We talked about sort of social justice and community development types of opportunities. So I think by educating people, a lot of the members that we saw that came to talk to us, because we got to sort of hover around the tables as alders, said, oh, I didn't know that, and now I have to think about how that's important to me as an individual. And we also asked you to think about your neighborhood and your city. So there was a lot of aha momenting going on at these, and then people could move into helping set the values and the budget and how those could interface with each other.
If nothing comes to mind, I understand, but can you think of any specific input you got last year that influenced the budget?
Yes, there were a couple things, and I'm just going to harken back to the rankings that we had last year. For me, the biggest epiphany was everything's important.
Well, yeah.
It's really amazing when you bring that many folks in a room, everything is important. But it really reaffirmed that basic services, pick up my garbage, plow my snow, make sure that I am safe, are taken care of. And interestingly enough, the social justice and community services was also ranked pretty high at most of the meetings. So I think that speaks to, we often have discussions about whether or not we should be working on economic development and police and safety, or whether we should be contributing to community services to help bolster people to participate in the community. And we learned that those are valuable things. That helped me a lot as an individual to continue to support those services.
I mean, I think part of what we learned also is that we weren't making a lot of mistakes. People were telling us that we were spending their money wisely. There weren't any services that people told us, you know what, absolutely, we don't need that. It was people wanted more of those services, more funding for things that we were already doing. So it was good to also get some confirmation that what we were choosing as priorities were the citizens' priorities, and that they were doing a good job representing those priorities in the mayor's office and on the council. So that in itself, I think, is really, really important, because people could have certainly told us, you know what, economic development, I don't think that's a city's job to do. You know, don't spend that much money in that budget item, or do this or do more of that, but take that away. And it wasn't that. It was everybody told us what we were doing were indeed really important to them. Everything was important.
And because they're willing to pay for that stuff, right?
That's one of the things that we've learned from the public. But I want to go back to last year's budget, make one more observation, which was, except for some political differences that I had with some of the council leadership and
some of the council leadership, present company excluded. No, but of course, I mean that's part of the deal.
It's a dynamic.
But except for that, the budget process went very smoothly, and then the point I want to make is that I think that this process sent a message to all of us about the priorities of the public, and that is why the vast majority of the budget was rather smooth last year.
That's a good point.
You know, and I think there was one thing that we learned about last year's process is that this is really a balance between educating the public about what we already do with their tax dollars and getting information from them about whether those are the right priorities, should we put more emphasis on one thing or another, or the things that we're missing. And what we've done is a little bit of adjustment in the time that we're going to be using with the public this year in making sure that we do a lot of the education through our website and through information that's going to be available in advance of the meeting, so that the time that we have together with citizens is really more of a time of dialogue and for us to hear from them. So we're really going to try to use more of those 2 hours in engaging them in dialogue and in telling us really how they feel we're doing and what the priorities are.
We were operating under some tremendous budget constraints last year, and one of the things that you might have expected to be vulnerable was the city community service budget. That budget was kept intact, and as the council president Lauren Kinnear here pointed out, community services on that value discussion came in number 2 in our ranking of the 5 or 6 budget areas. And that, I don't think there's any question that had an impact.
Since this is only the second year, I don't know if you can answer this, but I'll be curious to see if there's a big shift, if there's a difference year to year in terms of priorities, given variables like people's sense of the economy.
Or how about the fact that we had very little snow this year?
Right, good point.
Will that then reflect on people saying, well, snow removal is not that important?
Mow the park instead.
Oh, by the way, people have said, well, you're saving all this money.
That's right.
Because of the relatively calm winter and very little snow. Well, there's something going up in the budget this year. We got problems in terms of mowing. The park grasses have been growing for the last 30 days, and our mowing budget's going to have to go up.
Yeah.
We might bale hay, though, as a fundraiser. We can find a way through that. We're creative.
What do you not want to hear?
In the past, in terms of our budget process, and I'm not going to say I don't want to hear it, but we have had folks come sort of with their one issue and really lobbied hard to either preserve funding for it or increase funding for it. And I think what is different about this process is if you want to come and lobby for your organization or your project or your service, you have to do it in the context with all kinds of other citizens around you. It's not just you, the professional organizer, speaking to an elected official. You have to face other people who have different issues and different concerns and make your pitch. And I think what it did last year is it sort of moderated the conversation and spread people's thinking out about, wait a minute, my thing is important, but there are other really important things too. And I really liked that particular balance because it brought in more people. I mean, we had 550 people attend these last year. Fairly short notice, new process, and that's how many folks came out. We had 1,500 people do the survey, which took like an hour to do.
I'm going to take a break. We're going to come back and talk more about specific parts of the budget. Here's the list of community budget conversations that are scheduled. A couple of additions here. First of all, there's an earlier one, right? There's
one on April 11th, which will be in one of the public sections of the building known as the Lucky. And there we're working with AMS, the student government, and that one is going to focus on the campus this year.
Okay.
And then the other problem, what is it? We got a problem on May 8th?
There's some other event, an election, I believe, on the 8th that's been scheduled.
Oh, you can compete with the recall primary? No, you can't. Smart move. So that one will likely be rescheduled.
We're working on that right now.
No time or place yet, just likely rescheduled. Do you give them a bit of a primer? I mean, what do people need to know about the budget before they come, Paul?
Well, I think a couple of things. One, they need a basic understanding where we get our revenues, most of which comes from the property tax.
3/4.
3/4 from the property tax. The other thing is understanding what the existing allocation is, and really how expensive certain services are. You know, staffing a fire station is about $1.5 million a year just to staff it. That doesn't include the equipment or anything else, or keeping the building warm or cool, as the case may be. The other thing that they need to know is that we do not, as elected officials, enjoy the very tough decisions. I mean, this is hard stuff to do. I like the responsibility. I think that Chief and Lauren would agree, though. I mean, it's tough and it's heart-wrenching. And in the size of the budget, when you're making a $20,000 or $30,000 decision, that may not seem like much, but for that particular service, that's a lot of money.
Yeah.
It is.
So, I mean, but just, there's, what, public safety, community services, how many categories do you break it down into?
Well, we got planning and development, we got the library, we got the debt service, which is the interest and principal we have to pay, public safety, the attorney's office, the assessor, finance, you know, and these are some of the services we have to recognize. I mean, you know, the city clerk has to be there to take care of the elections. We don't want to be like that.
I grew up there, I can say that.
Last year, though, these meetings were by category, if that's the right word, right?
Correct. We kind of put a few categories together, like public safety included, for example, public health, police, and fire. So we tried to put some that made sense together, but they were still like kind of broad categories.
Yeah.
So each meeting was really focused on that category, and we decided this year that all meetings are about everything, because we really got a sense that it was really important for the citizens to be able to discuss the entire budget globally, and to be able to have that discussion among citizens about their differences maybe in priorities within that budget. When we were doing it by category, obviously people that cared about that specific category were coming in larger number to that meeting, which didn't allow for that much of a discussion among citizens about the different priorities. So I think this will allow for a better dialogue.
Okay.
We've also let the citizens direct that. Some people did come. They perhaps had another issue, but they came to that meeting because that's the only one that they could make in the series of 5. So we're sort of letting them also guide us on the whole infrastructure.
Let me use this example since it came up this past week, Paul. You had a news conference about the city's interest in the school conversation. Pretty general, but if people wanted to come to the budget meetings and talk about something like that, would that be appropriate?
That would be, and the place really to address it would be in terms of community services, because we're looking at our neighborhood resource teams and our folks involved in community services as a mechanism to do whatever it is we're going to end up doing with the school district. So that's a priority. And let me just mention, I just came back from a series of meetings in Chicago where one of the things that I learned in terms of the effectiveness where things are going well with the schools is the importance of social workers. Now, we don't have social workers here in the city. But one of the things, and
we never have we?
Well, the county does, but not the city.
Not the city, yeah.
But one of the things that particularly Shiva can speak to is we've already learned on our own here the importance of social workers. And I'm not sure what we're going to do, since that's not our function.
And that, you know, the role of the social workers is true in the schools and then in the community social workers. So the county obviously has a joining forces for families where there are social workers. And it's also really interesting for those of us who work on a regular basis, both with the community social workers and the social workers in the school, to see how that connection with a social worker, with somebody that really has that sense of everything that's going on within the life of a child and a family, and how they can connect with the multiple different services that they need, is really critical. And you know, just kind of speak about how important social workers are. Sometimes we forget these are people that really are trained in their background to really be able to look at a holistic family and social issues that we often look from, again, in our ways that, building inspection, police, law enforcement, these different categories, but somebody needs to bring it all together.
I mean, this reminds me of the community resource teams.
Well, and what did our community resource teams folks tell us years ago? They said, we do a good job, add a social worker, and which makes us, in effect, joining forces for families, and we're 100 times more effective.
Yes, yeah, and I didn't know that. All right, we're going to come back and talk more about the upcoming meetings right after this. Do those exist? Do those teams exist right now?
Well,
again, the locations of the community budget conversations, we didn't mention that they're from 7 to 9 p.m., each one of them. And again, a reminder that May 8th one will probably be moved to a different date. And you can get the information on the city's website. There's a good budget page that explains what the budget is. There's a survey and information on the conversations. I'm joined by Madison Mayor Paul Soglin, Madison City Council President Lauren Kinnair, and President Pro Tem Shiva bidar-sielaff. I'm trying to get to the point of who didn't come to the meetings that you would like to hear from. Are there groups of people that
there absolutely are, and we've made some. We're working very hard. The first one, of course, is students. Students are a big part of our community.
Right.
So we're doing a special session for the university students, and other students can certainly come and participate in that. We also recognize that most of the people who came to those look like us here at this table.
I was wondering about that,
and
too.
that's always a problem for our city. Hence, you'll see that we've tried to expand it in terms of language. So we're trying to work that direction. We're also talking about making this a little bit more of a self-serve opportunity. For example, creating kits that if there is an organization in our community that's reaching a population that's typically not interacting with us here, that they can go out and have a separate meeting and talk about the same issues. We'd like to have people be able to have materials and coaching and the ability to answer questions. Alders may participate more vigorously in that also, and that way we can work with some micro groups and the information can be fed back to us.
When we go back to last year's sessions, if you take 5 sessions, 2 hours, each, that's 10 hours. My guess is that between Shiva, Lauren, and myself, all the sessions combined, other than some summation remarks, I don't think we together spoke more than 20 minutes. All the rest of it was working sessions of the groups. Our best attended session was probably the Urban League site. And that was the best in terms of diversity, also in terms of age. And we got the one session on campus, but when we get out into the rest of the city, we still want more folks in that 25 to 40 age group to come on out. That's just critical.
And that general neighborhood meeting, it would be at Wright Middle School this year rather than Urban League?
Yes.
Yep.
Bigger facility.
And so city staff comes to these to answer questions. And
when we talk about attendance, we're not including the 20, 30 city staff that are there listening and there to answer questions.
And alders from the neighborhoods typically will go to the...
We had great alder attendance at the sessions last year. I don't think there was one session that didn't have at least 7 to 8 alders at them. So alders were also going to as many sessions as they could attend, whether it was in their neighborhood or somewhere else, because that's one of our biggest challenges for the budget. Our responsibility is to take decisions for the entire city. We represent our district, but at the end of the day, we're putting together a budget for the entire city of Madison. So we need to balance all of our priorities, obviously being a good advocate for our district, but making sure that we're balancing the priorities of the entire city. So for us to go out and actually listen to what citizens are saying in different neighborhoods, I think it's certainly for me was the best part of the budget conversations.
And just practically, I should have gone a little bit further, but are there opportunities for citizens to go online and contribute if they can't get to meetings?
Absolutely, and we strongly encourage people to do that because we know that not everyone can come out and talk, but that was also an influential part. Interestingly enough, the live conversations and the survey were pretty much in sync with each other, but we do need that impact there too. It's a shorter survey this year. Please remind people.
As soon as they're done watching, go to the city website, go to the community budget conversations, and get started.
Jeff, my producer's got the Twitter tag up there too, and it's just 2012, guys. You know, people can tweet their input, and then how are they going to see? How are citizens going to see that they were heard here? You know, how do you offer the budget in a way that I can see that this was effective?
Well, there's beautiful pie charts there. One of the things that we did following all of the conversations last year is we had some folks put together a final report. And that's available still, and I think we should probably put it back on our website, but it does do a summary of what people told us, how the survey rankings panned out in terms of the different areas. And I think part of what we should do is we're developing the budget, or when you write your final note over the budget, is to probably hearken back to some of the things that we learned and say these are things that are directly a result of those community budget conversations.
This is a big change, you know. I mean, I know you went through it once already. Obviously, you're sold on it, but it's a different way of budgeting.
And 5 years from now, it'll be different. Again, because every year, every council, every mayor is going to make modifications. But the one principle, or two principles, I should say, are sound. First, get the public input in now, not the public hearings in October and November. And second, keep it value-based, not advocates for some specific pet project.
And you'll still have the public hearings in October and November because you need those. Okay, first one then is Thursday, April 12th, other than the student meeting on Wednesday, April 11th. And again, you can go to the city's website for more information on that. Thank you very much for joining me this morning. We're going to come back and wrap up For the Record right after this. Thanks to the mayor, Lauren and Sheba, for joining me this morning. Next week, as the economy improves, so does the housing market. We'll answer your questions about buying or refinancing a home with our friends from Summit Credit Union. It's next week at 10:30. Thanks for watching. Enjoy the rest of your holiday weekend.